Caleb Turner stood in a steamy New Orleans courtroom, expecting a quick dismissal for a curfew violation, his heart steady. Judge Harlan Boone, eyes glinting with malice, accused him of robbing a jewelry store, sneering, "Delinquent." The gallery gasped as Boone waved fabricated evidence, sentencing Caleb to juvenile detention. Trembling, Caleb declared, "My father is Chief Justice Elias Turner." Boone scoffed, oblivious that Elias was nearby. The gavel slammed, but a shadow stirred at the door. Caleb's future hung in limbo, his name tainted. Can one boy's truth topple a racist judge? Before we dive deeper, let us know where you're watching from. If you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe because tomorrow's episode will shake you to your core. The New Orleans courthouse buzzed with tension, its marble halls humid under the morning sun, as Caleb Turner sat shackled in a holding cell, his wrists chafing against cold steel. The sting of Judge Harlan Boone's sneer, branding him a delinquent, burned in his chest. His revelation about his father, Chief Justice Elias Turner, had shaken the courtroom, but Boone's gavel had fallen like a guillotine. Caleb's eyes darted to the barred window, where shadows of palm trees swayed, a cruel reminder of the freedom he'd lost in minutes. He was just 16, an honor student with dreams of engineering, not a thief. The fabricated robbery charge, pinned on him with doctored evidence, felt like a noose tightening around his future. Footsteps echoed heavy and deliberate, and the cell door creaked open. A guard, his badge glinting, muttered, "Your dad's here, kid," but his smirk hinted at trouble. Caleb's heart leapt, hope flickering, only to dim as he recalled Boone's icy confidence. What could Elias do against a judge so brazen? Elias Turner strode through the courthouse's arched doors, his black robe billowing like a storm cloud, his face a mask of controlled fury. At 52, he was Louisiana's youngest Chief Justice, a black man who'd clawed his way through racist law schools and biased benches to wield unmatched authority. Yesterday's hearing, meant to clear Caleb's minor curfew violation, had spiraled into a nightmare. Elias had been in chambers reviewing appeals when a clerk burst in, stammering about Caleb's outburst and Boone's sentencing. Now, as he marched toward the courtroom, reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing like vultures circling. "Chief Justice, is this personal?" one shouted. Elias ignored them, his mind on Caleb's trembling voice declaring his identity. Boone's. Mockery had been a public slap, but Elias sensed a deeper game. He'd seen judges like Boone before, drunk on power, hiding behind gavels to mask prejudice. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a calculated attack. The courtroom doors swung open, and Elias's presence silenced the gallery. Boone, perched on the bench, froze mid-sentence, his jowls quivering. Caleb, flanked by bailiffs, looked up, his eyes wide with relief. "Elias's," voice boomed. "This court is in recess. I demand a retrial for Caleb Turner citing judicial bias." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Boone's face reddened, but he slammed his gavel, snarling, "You have no jurisdiction here, Turner." Elias stepped closer, his gaze piercing. "I have the state's highest authority. Your evidence is suspect and your conduct reeks of prejudice." The gallery erupted, some cheering, others hissing slurs under their breath. Caleb's chains rattled. As he stood taller, hope surging. Elias filed an emergency motion citing Boone's rushed sentencing and lack of credible witnesses. For a moment, it seemed justice might prevail. But Boone wasn't done. Behind closed doors he huddled with his clerk, a wiry man with nervous eyes, and Sheriff Lyle Grayson, a hulking figure whose badge hid a history of brutality. Boone's fingers tapped a manila folder, stuffed with falsified police reports claiming, "Caleb was caught fleeing the jewelry store with a diamond necklace. Plant these in the case file," Boone hissed. "Make it airtight." Grayson nodded, his lips curling. By noon, the reports surfaced in court, detailing a supposed eyewitness, a store clerk who never existed. Elias's motions stalled as Boone waved the new evidence, smirking, "Your boy's a thief, Chief Justice. Facts don't lie." Caleb's stomach churned, his hope fading. The gallery whispered, some nodding at Boone's lies, their biases fed by his authority. Outside, Caleb's classmates, led by his friend Jamal, launched a hashtag #DukelFreeCaleb, posting videos of his science fair trophies and debate team wins. The posts went viral, flooding X with thousands of shares by dusk. Caleb wasn't a delinquent. He was a kid who'd tutored half his class in math. The online outcry gave Elias leverage, but Boone's allies moved faster. Grayson, lounging in his precinct office, uploaded a doctored video to a local news site. It showed Caleb, his face grainy but unmistakable, confessing to the robbery in a staged interrogation. The video spread like wildfire, racking up millions of views. By evening, X was a battleground, with trolls spewing racist vitriol. "Lock him up." Typical thug. Caleb's classmates fought back, but the damage was done. Elias watched the video on his phone, his jaw tightening. The voice wasn't Caleb's, and the timestamp was off, but the public didn't care. This was Boone's first counterattack, a digital dagger to Caleb's name. Elias refused to fold. He tracked down a real witness, a delivery driver named Marcus Tate, who'd seen a white man, not Caleb, sprinting from the jewelry store that night. Marcus, a wiry father of 3, hesitated, fearing police retaliation, but Elias's calm assurance won him over. "I'll protect you," Elias vowed, securing Marcus's affidavit. It felt like a breakthrough, a chance to dismantle Boone's lies. Elias submitted the affidavit to the court, his chest swelling with cautious optimism. Caleb, still in the holding cell, heard the news from a guard and dared to smile. Maybe his father could fix this, but Boone's syndicate was steps ahead. Grayson's deputies swooped in that night, arresting Marcus for obstructing justice on a trumped-up charge of jaywalking near the crime scene. Marcus's affidavit was buried, his family threatened into silence. Elias's victory evaporated, his witness silenced. The retaliation didn't stop there. At midnight, Caleb's high school, a brick building in the 9th Ward, was vandalized. Red spray paint scrawled racial slurs across the lockers, with Caleb's fault smeared on the principal's door. Students arrived to chaos, some blaming Caleb for stirring trouble. Jamal texted Caleb, "We got your back," but the slur stung worse than the shackles. Caleb's dream of college, of escaping the stereotypes Boone had pinned on him, felt farther away. Elias, working late in his chambers, got a call about the vandalism, his heart sinking. He drove to the school, staring at the hateful words under flickering streetlights, his resolve hardening. This was war. As Elias returned to his office, a brick shattered his window, glass spraying across his desk. A note, tied with twine, landed among the shards. "Drop the case." The handwriting was sloppy, but the message was clear. Elias's hands shook, not from fear, but from rage. Boone and Grayson thought they could bully him into submission, using Caleb as their pawn. They didn't know Elias Turner. He pocketed the note, evidence of their desperation, and called his wife Aisha to check on her and Caleb's sister. The family was safe for now, but the brick was a warning of worse to come. Elias sat at his desk, the humid night pressing in, and opened his laptop. Boone's syndicate ran deeper than one judge, and Elias needed answers. Who was bankrolling this frame-up, and how far did their power reach? Caleb, lying on the cell's cot, stared at the ceiling, the guard's earlier smirk replaying in his mind. His father's entrance had felt like salvation, but Boone's forged reports and Grayson's video had twisted the knife. The vandalism at school, the slurs, they were personal, meant to break him. Yet Caleb's mind raced, piecing together Boone's smugness, the too perfect evidence. This wasn't just about him. It was about his dad, a black man at the top, a target for those who hated his power. Caleb clenched his fists, vowing to fight not just for himself, but for every kid labeled a delinquent by a system built to crush them. The cell door rattled, a guard calling lights out, but Caleb's resolve burned brighter than the darkness. The New Orleans dawn broke heavy with humidity, casting a golden haze over the 9th Ward, where Caleb Turner sat on a cot in his cell, the weight of Judge Harlan Boone's lies pressing against his ribs. The racial slurs scrawled across his school's lockers haunted him, each word a blade carving away his identity as an honor student. His father, Chief Justice Elias Turner, had stormed into court 2 days ago demanding a retrial. But Sheriff Lyle Grayson's doctored video, branding Caleb a thief, had poisoned the public's mind. Could a 16-year-old outsmart a racist? Judge's vendetta. Elias in his oak-paneled chambers pored over case files, his eyes burning from sleepless nights. The brick through his window, with its scrawled threat to drop the case, lay on his desk, a grim reminder of Boone's reach. Elias knew this wasn't just about Caleb. It was an attack on his legacy, a black man daring to hold power in a system that loathed him. Who was pulling Boone's strings, and how deep did this corruption run? Elias needed answers, and he needed them fast. He called Nia Brooks, a private investigator with a reputation for digging where others feared to tread. Nia, a wiry woman with sharp eyes and a scar across her cheek, met Elias in a dimly lit cafe on Bourbon Street, the air thick with chicory and jazz. "Boone's not acting alone," she whispered, sliding a folder across the table. "He's tied to a legal syndicate rigging trials for cash." Elias flipped through grainy photos of Boone, meeting a man in a tailored suit, their hands exchanging envelopes. Bank records showed deposits to Boone's account, thousands of dollars funneled through shell companies. Was this the proof to bury Boone? Nia's intel pointed to a network of judges, sheriffs, and attorneys, profiting by framing black defendants like Caleb to clear dockets for wealthy clients. Elias's pulse quickened. This was bigger than one courtroom. He tasked Nia with tracing, the money feeling a spark of hope. Could they dismantle this syndicate before it crushed his son? Caleb, meanwhile, paced his cell, the clank of his shackles echoing off concrete walls. His friend Jamal's texts about "Free Caleb" kept him sane, but the vandalism at school had turned some classmates against him. Why did lies spread faster than truth? He overheard guards muttering about that Turner kid stirring trouble, their voices laced with contempt. The cell's fluorescent light buzzed, flickering like his fading hope. Elias had promised to fight, but Boone's forged police reports and Grayson's video felt like iron bars tightening around him. Caleb's mind raced, replaying Boone's sneer, the word delinquent dripping with racist venom. He wasn't a thief, but who would believe a black kid over a judge? Nia worked fast, hacking into a syndicate server from a safe house in the Treme, her laptop glowing in the dark. She uncovered emails detailing Boone's bribes, each one a nail in his coffin. Elias met her at midnight, the Mississippi rivers masking their words. "We've got him," Nia said, handing over a USB drive. Elias clutched it, envisioning Boone's downfall. He filed the bank records with the state bar, petitioning for Boone's suspension, his heart pounding with triumph. Could this evidence free Caleb and expose the syndicate? The bar scheduled an emergency hearing, and Elias allowed himself a rare smile, picturing Caleb back home, safe with Aisha and his sister. The USB was their lifeline, proof that Boone's gavel was bought and paid for. But Boone's syndicate struck back with venom. At dawn, Grayson's deputies raided Nia's safe house, kicking down the door as she fled through a back alley, her laptop smashed. The USB's data was backed up, but the physical drive was gone, seized as stolen property. Elias's petition hit a wall when the bar, swayed by syndicate allies, demanded original evidence. Who had tipped off Grayson? Boone, in his chambers, grinned as he shredded Nia's photos, his fingers stained with ink. He wasn't just a judge, he was a cog in a machine that crushed black lives for profit. His next move was surgical. He ordered a lackey to hack Caleb's school email, planting code that framed him for breaching court servers. By noon, an alert hit the clerk's desk. Caleb Turner, hacker, had tampered with Boone's case files. The accusation landed like a grenade. Caleb, summoned to a hearing, stood before Boone, his legs trembling as the judge waved a printout of the hacked email. "You're not just a thief, boy. You're a cybercriminal," Boone sneered, his voice echoing in the packed courtroom. The gallery murmured, some nodding, their biases fed by Boone's lies. Caleb's throat tightened. He'd never touched a court server. Why was the system so eager to bury him? Elias, in the front row, clenched his fists, his mind racing to counter this new frame-up. The hearing adjourned, but the damage was done. Caleb's name, already smeared by Grayson's video, now carried the weight of a federal crime. The syndicate's retaliation deepened. Aisha Turner, Caleb's mother, arrived at her hospital shift, her nurse's scrubs crisp, only to be called to the director's office. "You're fired," the director said, avoiding her eyes. "Sheriff Grayson says your family's trouble." Aisha's heart sank. She'd worked 10 years, saving lives in the ER, yet Grayson's word erased her career. She drove home, tears blurring the neon signs of Canal Street, wondering how to tell Caleb. Was this what it meant to be black in New Orleans, always one step from ruin? The hospital's board, pressured by syndicate donors, had caved without a fight. Aisha's firing wasn't just personal. It was a warning to Elias. Back off, or your family pays. The final blow came at dusk as the Turners' home in Gentilly, a modest shotgun house with a jasmine-covered porch, became a target. Their mob, incited by Grayson's deputies spreading lies about Caleb's crimes, gathered outside, their shouts piercing the humid air. "Thief!" they screamed, hurling bottles that shattered against the door. Racial slurs flew, raw and hateful, as the mob torched the lawn, flames licking the night sky. Elias, alerted by a neighbor, raced home, pulling Aisha and Caleb's sister, Maya, to safety as gunfire cracked behind them. The house smoldered, its windows blackened, a symbol of the syndicate's wrath. Caleb, still in his cell, heard the news from a guard, his chest tightening. How much more could his family lose? Elias stood amid the ashes of his lawn, the acrid, smoke stinging his eyes, his resolve unbreakable. The raided safe house, Caleb's hacking charge, Aisha's firing, and now this mob attack. They were Boone's syndicate flexing its muscle. Who could stand against a machine this vast? Yet Elias saw cracks in their armor. The mob's fury, the rushed hack, they reeked of desperation. He called Nia, now hiding in a bayou cabin, and vowed to dig deeper. The syndicate wasn't invincible. It was scared. Caleb, in his cell, stared at the wall, his mind replaying the mob's slurs. He wasn't a delinquent, and he'd prove it. For his mom, for his dad, for himself. Comment number 1: if you believe no family should face this racist wrath for seeking justice, then hit like and subscribe to join Caleb's fight. How far will Boone's syndicate go to silence the Turners? And can Elias uncover their secrets before they strike again? The New Orleans air hung thick with the scent of charred jasmine. The Turners' smoldering lawn a grim monument to the mob's racist fury. Caleb Turner, still shackled in his courthouse cell, felt the weight of the syndicate's wrath. His mother, Aisha, fired from her nursing job and their home now a blackened shell, were sacrifices to Judge Harlan Boone's vendetta. The hacking charge, pinning him as a cybercriminal, tightened the noose. Caleb's fingers traced the cell's concrete wall, his mind racing. He wasn't the delinquent Boone branded him. He was a fighter, like his father, Chief Justice Elias Turner. Elias, in a borrowed apartment, sifted through legal briefs. The brick's threat dropped the case, etched in his memory. Sheriff Lyle Grayson's mob had escalated Boone's war, but Caleb's spirit burned brighter. He'd prove his innocence, not just for himself, but for every black kid crushed by a gavel's lie. Caleb's chance came at dusk, when a distracted guard left the cell block door ajar. His heart pounded as he slipped out, sneaking through the courthouse's service corridors, their fluorescent lights flickering like a storm. He'd overheard Boone's clerk bragging about server logs that could clear his name, stored in the records room. Caleb, a tech whiz who'd built his own computer, knew those logs held metadata, proving the hacking charge was a setup. The records room, a maze of dusty files and humming servers, was unguarded, a rare lapse in Boone's iron grip. Caleb's fingers flew across a keyboard, bypassing weak security with skills honed in coding club. He found the logs, timestamps showing no activity from his email, and copied them to a flash drive. His chest swelled with triumph, the drive a lifeline to freedom. He slipped back to his cell undetected, clutching the evidence. This could bury Boone's lies. But Boone's syndicate was a hydra, its head striking from every shadow. The next morning, as Caleb awaited a hearing, Boone's clerk, a gaunt man with shifty eyes, slipped into the holding area. While Caleb dozed, the clerk planted a baggie of marijuana in his backpack, tucked beneath textbooks. At the hearing, Boone, his jowls quivering with glee, ordered a routine search. A bailiff found the drugs, holding them aloft like a trophy. A hacker and a drug dealer, Boone sneered, his voice dripping with racist venom. The gallery gasped, some whispering slurs, their biases fed by the spectacle. Caleb's stomach dropped, the flash drive useless against this new frame-up. He stammered, "That's not mine." But Boone's gavel silenced him, ordering his transfer to juvenile detention. The clang of handcuffs was louder than his protests, each click a nail in his coffin. Elias, in the courtroom's front row, gripped the bench, his knuckles whitening. He'd planned to present the logs today, but Boone's stunt had derailed. Everything. He bailed Caleb out within hours, using his dwindling savings, and brought him to the borrowed apartment, where Aisha and Maya waited, their faces etched with worry. Elias vowed to fight the drug charge, but the syndicate's next blow was already landing. Grayson, lounging in his precinct with a cigar, orchestrated a smear campaign. By noon, local news ran stories calling Caleb a thug, splicing footage of his arrest with grainy clips of unrelated crimes. X exploded with hashtags, Mona Caleb the Thug trending alongside racist memes. Caleb's classmates, even Jamal, faced harassment for defending him, their DMs flooded with threats. Aisha scrolled through the posts, her heart breaking. Her son, who'd won math Olympiads, was now a caricature of every stereotype Boone wielded. Elias refused to let the lies fester. He rallied community leaders from pastors to activists in a church basement, the air thick with coffee and resolve. Reverend Clara Jones, a grey-haired firebrand, pledged her congregation's support, organizing a march to the courthouse. "Caleb's our son too," she declared, her voice echoing off stained glass windows. The meeting buzzed with plans, flyers printed, and megaphones readied. Elias felt a flicker of hope, the community's strength a shield against Boone's. Syndicate. He shared the server logs with Clara, who promised to amplify them online. The march set for dawn would show New Orleans that Caleb wasn't alone. Elias hugged Caleb, whispering, "We'll clear your name." Caleb nodded, clutching the flash drive, its weight a reminder of his defiance. But Boone's syndicate thrived on sabotage. At the march, hundreds gathered, their signs reading "Justice for Caleb" under a crimson sunrise. Elias spoke, holding up the logs, his voice booming. "This proves my son's innocence." The crowd roared, live streams capturing every word. Caleb, beside him, felt taller, the flash drive his sword. They marched to the courthouse, chanting, their footsteps shaking the pavement. Elias presented the logs in an emergency hearing, detailing how the hacking charge was fabricated. The gallery buzzed, reporters scribbling, as Boone's face twitched. For a moment, justice seemed within reach. Then Boone's counterattack landed like a sledgehammer. He'd bribed the jury, 3 members secretly on the syndicate's payroll. During deliberations, they swayed others, citing inconsistencies in the logs. The foreman, a syndicate plant, declared the evidence inadmissible, claiming it was tampered. Boone, feigning regret, upheld the ruling, smirking as he adjourned. Elias's heart sank, the logs rendered useless. Caleb's shoulders slumped. The crowd's cheers now a hollow echo. The march had been a triumph, but Boone's gavel had stolen it. How could a jury betray them so blatantly? The syndicate's final strike came at midnight, as the Turners rested in the apartment. A protester, radicalized by Grayson's lies about Caleb's thuggery, slipped past courthouse security, a knife hidden in his boot. He'd been promised cash by a syndicate lackey to send a message. As Elias prepared for the next hearing, the protester breached the courtroom's anteroom, where Caleb waited for a bail check. The blade flashed, grazing Caleb's arm as he dove behind a desk. Bailiffs tackled the attacker, but blood seeped through Caleb's sleeve, his eyes wide with shock. Elias rushed in, his roar shaking the walls, "Get my son out!" Medics bandaged Caleb, but the wound was more than physical. The knife had cut deeper, into his belief that truth could win. Elias carried Caleb to the apartment, Aisha's hands trembling as she cleaned the wound. The community's march, the server logs, all for nothing against Boone's bought jury and hired blades. Grayson's smear had turned neighbors into enemies, the protesters attack-proof of their reach. Caleb, staring at the ceiling, felt the flash drive in his pocket, its promise fading. Yet his defiance flared. Boone wanted him broken, but Caleb wouldn't bend. Elias, watching his son, saw that fire and knew the fight was far from over. The syndicate had struck hard, but the Turners were steel, forged in New Orleans' heat, ready to face whatever came next. The New Orleans night pulsed with the hum of cicadas, but Caleb Turner's heart thumped louder, his bandaged arm throbbing from the protester's knife. The borrowed apartment, a cramped refuge for his family, smelled of antiseptic and fear. Judge Harlan Boone's syndicate had struck again, their bribe jury dismissing Caleb's server logs, branding him a drug dealer and hacker. His mother Aisha sat silently, her nursing career stolen by Sheriff Lyle Grayson's lies. Chief Justice Elias Turner paced, the sting of the courthouse defeat burning his resolve. Could a black family outlast a racist machine? Caleb clutched. The flash drive, its data now useless, but his defiance roared. He wasn't Boone's delinquent. He was a son fighting for truth. Elias knew silence was surrender. He called Nia Brooks, the private investigator whose safe house had been raided, and planned a bold move. They'd broadcast Boone's corruption live, exposing the syndicate to millions. Nia, holed up in a bayou shack, hacked a streaming platform, her fingers dancing over a burner laptop. Elias gathered community leaders, Reverend Clara Jones among them in a church basement, their faces lit by candlelight. "Caleb's fight is ours," Clara vowed, her voice a beacon. They set the broadcast for midnight, syncing it with a march to the courthouse. Would New Orleans rise for a boy smeared as a thug? At midnight, Elias and Nia went live from a rooftop, the city's neon skyline glittering below. Elias held up the server logs, his voice steady. "Judge Harlan Boone framed my son Caleb with lies. These logs prove his innocence, but a corrupt jury buried them." Nia streamed photos of Boone's bribes, bank records flashing across screens. Caleb, beside his father, spoke, his voice cracking. "I'm no thief. I'm a student, a son, a human." The broadcast exploded, racking up millions of views on X. Hashtags hung Justice for Caleb trended globally, with strangers sharing Caleb's debate team clips, his science fair medals. Protests erupted, hundreds spilling into the French Quarter, their signs glowing under streetlights. Could a city's roar topple a judge's gavel? The march swelled, a river of voices chanting, "Free Caleb!" Elias led the crowd, his robe swapped for a t-shirt, Aisha and Maya at his side. Caleb marched, his arm stinging but his head high. Live streams captured the sea of fists, the air thick with hope. Reverend Clara's megaphone boomed, "We won't let racism win." The courthouse loomed, its columns stark against the dawn. Elias felt victory within reach, the broadcast a sledgehammer against Boone's lies. Caleb's speech had humanized him, stripping away Grayson's thug label. The crowd's energy was electric, a promise of justice. But Boone's syndicate thrived on chaos, and their counterattack was swift. Grayson's deputies, clad in riot gear, descended on the march, their batons gleaming. Tear gas canisters hissed, clouds choking the air. Protesters coughed, scattering as deputies targeted Caleb, their eyes glinting with racist venom. "You're done, Turner," one snarled, slamming him against a lamppost. Handcuffs snapped. Around Caleb's wrists, the charge inciting a riot. The crowd screamed, live streams capturing the brutality. Elias fought through the haze, his shouts lost in the chaos, but deputies hauled Caleb to a van, its siren piercing the dawn. How could a peaceful march end in chains? Aisha clutched Maya, tears cutting tracks through the gas's sting, their family fractured again. In jail, Caleb's cell reeked of mildew, the walls smeared with graffiti. Guards taunted him, their slurs echoing Boone's courtroom mockery. "Delinquents back," one sneered, shoving him against the bars. Another punched his stomach, the blow stealing his breath. Caleb crumpled, his arm's wound reopening. Blood seeping through the bandage. He curled into a ball, the guards' laughter ringing, but his mind clung to the march's chants. Why did his truth provoke such hate? The broadcast had rallied millions, yet here he was, beaten for being black, for daring to speak. His defiance flickered, a candle in a storm, but it didn't die. Elias, outside the jail, demanded Caleb's release, his voice hoarse. A sympathetic, "Guard, a young woman with tired eyes," slipped Caleb a burner phone, whispering, "Call your dad." Caleb's fingers shook as he dialed, but the line crackled, unnatural static cutting through. The phone was bugged, a syndicate trap. Within hours, Grayson's deputies stormed Elias's safe house, a rundown motel on the city's edge. They kicked in the door, guns drawn, as Elias, Aisha and Maya fled through a back window, glass shattering behind them. The safe house erupted in flames, a firebomb's roar swallowing their belongings. Grayson's voice crackled over a deputy's radio. "No Turner escapes." Was this the syndicate's endgame, to burn the family to ash? The fire's glow lit the night, smoke curling over New Orleans like a shroud. Elias regrouped with Nia, now hiding in a warehouse, her face grim. The broadcast's triumph was ashes, Caleb's arrest a public humiliation. But Caleb, in his cell, refused to break. He used the bugged phone to send a coded text to Jamal, urging him to keep justice for Caleb alive. His jail speech, smuggled out by the guard, hit X, its raw pain going viral. "I'm not what they say," Caleb's voice echoed, "but they can't silence us." Millions shared it, protests reigniting. Could a boy's words spark a revolution? Boone, watching the viral clip from his chambers, felt his grip slip. The syndicate's bribes, Grayson's brutality, they weren't enough. He needed a final blow. He ordered a deepfake, crafted by a syndicate hacker, showing Elias confessing to judicial misconduct, rigging Caleb's case. The video dropped online, its polished lies seamless. X erupted, Gary Crooked Chief trending, with trolls spewing racist bile, Turner's as bad as his kid. Elias's credibility tanked, colleagues distancing themselves, the state bar eyeing his seat. Aisha scrolled the posts, her heart sinking. How could lies twist a hero into a villain? The deepfake was Boone's masterstroke, a digital guillotine for the Turners' fight. Caleb, bruised and bleeding, heard the guards mock Elias's confession, their laughter a knife in his chest. The broadcast, the march, his speech, all undone by a lie. Yet the viral clip of his words burned brighter, protests swelling outside the jail. He gripped the cell's bars, his arms pain a reminder of the knife, the gas, the fists. Boone wanted him broken, but Caleb's voice had reached millions. Elias, hiding with Nia, watched the protests on a cracked phone, his eyes blazing. The deepfake had wounded them, but the city's roar was their shield. The syndicate had struck hard, but the Turners were far from defeated. Comment number 1, if you stand with Caleb against this racist syndicate's lies, then hit like and subscribe to fuel his fight. Will Caleb's viral cry for justice break Boone's grip? Or will the syndicate's next strike shatter the Turners for good? The New Orleans dawn bled crimson over the bayou, its murky waters mirroring Caleb Turner's battered spirit. His jail cell, damp with mildew, held the echoes of guards' slurs and the ache of his reopened wound. The viral speech he'd smuggled, out a cry against Judge Harlan Boone's lies, had sparked protests. But Sheriff Lyle Grayson's deepfake, painting Chief Justice Elias Turner as a corrupt judge, had gutted their momentum. Caleb's arm throbbed, the knife's graze a reminder of Boone's syndicate. Could a beaten kid keep fighting? Elias, hiding in a warehouse with Aisha and Maya, watched the protests on a cracked phone, his heart torn. The fire-bombed safe house. Grayson's taunts, they were meant to break them. Yet Caleb's voice, raw and unbroken, fueled his resolve. This wasn't just about a frame-up. It was a war on black defiance. Caleb's cell door creaked open, the sympathetic guard, her eyes, weary, whispering, "You've got friends outside." She slipped him a note with an address, a hacker collective in the Treme. Released on a technicality Elias had fought for, Caleb slipped into the humid night, his hoodie hiding his face. The collective, a group of coders led by Zara, a dreadlocked tech genius, operated from a basement pulsing with server hums. "We saw your speech," Zara said, her fingers tapping a keyboard. "Boone's syndicate's going down." They hacked Grayson's accounts, uncovering payments to the syndicate, thousands funneled through offshore banks. Caleb's coding skills shone, tracing transactions to Boone's allies. The data was gold, proof of a rigged system targeting black lives. Was this the key to clearing his name? Zara's team leaked the transaction records to X, tagging "Justice for Caleb." The posts exploded, millions sharing screenshots of Grayson's dirty money. Protesters flooded the French Quarter, their chants shaking the cobblestones. Caleb, monitoring from the basement, felt a surge of hope. The records could force a federal probe, maybe even suspend Boone. Elias, linked via a secure call, praised Caleb's courage, his voice thick with pride. "We're close, son," he said, planning to submit the records to a U.S. attorney. The collective's screens glowed, data streaming like a river of truth. Could a handful of hackers topple a syndicate's throne? But Boone's machine struck back with surgical precision. A mole in the collective, a quiet coder named Dax, had been feeding Grayson intel for cash. At midnight, as Caleb encrypted the records, police sirens wailed. Grayson's deputies raided the basement, their boots thundering down the stairs. Zara shoved Caleb toward a trapdoor, shouting, "Run!" He dove into a crawlspace, emerging in an alley as flashbangs lit the night. The raid was chaos, servers smashed, Zara arrested. Caleb sprinted through the Treme, his lungs burning, and reached the bayou's edge, its reeds swallowing him. His flash drive, tucked in his sock, held the leaked data, but the collective was shattered. How had Grayson known their every move? Caleb hid in the bayou, mosquitoes buzzing, his arm's wound pulsing with pain. He replayed Dax's nervous glances, the mole's betrayal a gut punch. The raid was Climax 1, a syndicate strike to silence their truth. Elias in the warehouse got Zara's frantic text about the raid, his fists clenching. The leaked records were out, but the syndicate wasn't done. Boone, in his chambers, smirked as he watched news of the raid, his fingers drumming a new plan. He targeted Aisha, framing her for medical fraud at her old hospital. Forged records, planted by a syndicate lackey, claimed she'd stolen painkillers, a lie that threatened her nursing license. By morning, the state board suspended her, the news hitting X with headlines, "Turner family's crime spree." Aisha at the warehouse stared at the posts, her hands shaking. Why was her sacrifice never enough? Elias refused to let the frame-up stand. He tracked down a whistleblower, a former syndicate accountant named Lena Carter, who'd kept ledgers of Boone's bribes. Lena, a nervous woman with graying hair, met Elias in a dive bar, her voice low. "They'll kill me for this," she said, handing over a ledger detailing payments to Grayson and Boone. Elias felt a rush of triumph, the ledger a weapon to dismantle the syndicate. He secured Lena's affidavit, promising protection, and planned to file it with the U.S. attorney alongside the hacked records. Caleb, emerging from the bayou, joined Elias, his eyes blazing despite the pain. The ledger was their ace, a chance to bury Boone's lies. But Grayson's retaliation was merciless. His men kidnapped Lena that night, snatching her from her apartment. As she screamed, a taunting video hit X showing Lena bound, her face bruised, with Grayson's voice hissing, "Turner's back off or she's next." Elias's heart stopped, the ledger now useless without Lena's testimony. Caleb, watching the video on Nia's phone, felt sick, his defiance shaken. How could they save Lena? Grayson's trap tightened, and Caleb's rescue attempt was a desperate gamble. He tracked the video's metadata to a warehouse in Algiers, sneaking through its rusted gates at dusk. But it was a syndicate ambush, mercenaries waiting with rifles. Bullets tore through the swamp air, one grazing Caleb's leg as he dove into the muck. The ambush was Climax 2, a deadly snare to crush his fight. Caleb crawled through the bayou, blood mixing with mud, the flash drive still in his sock. The mercenaries' shouts faded, but Lena was gone, the ledger tainted by her absence. Elias, at the warehouse, got Caleb's text about the ambush, his roar shaking the walls. Nia patching. Caleb's leg cursed the mole's betrayal. The leaked records had sparked protests, but Grayson's kidnap and ambush had stolen their edge. Aisha, her license in limbo, held Maya, their eyes on Caleb's limping form. The syndicate's strikes were relentless, each one crueler than the last. Boone's lies, Grayson's violence, they were a machine grinding black lives to dust. Caleb, slumped against a crate, felt the weight of Lena's kidnapping, Aisha's framing, his own wounds. The bayou's croaks mocked his pain, but his speech's echo, millions chanting his name, burned in his chest. He wasn't Boone's delinquent. He was a spark in the dark. Elias, watching the protests swell on X, saw Caleb's fire and knew they'd fight on. The syndicate had drawn blood, but the Turners were rooted in New Orleans' soil, their defiance a tide rising against Boone's throne. Grayson's taunts, the mercenaries' bullets, they were desperate, a sign the syndicate feared a boy's truth. The New Orleans night was a cauldron of heat and despair, the bayou's croaks a mocking chorus for Caleb Turner's wounds. His leg, grazed by a mercenary's bullet, pulsed with pain, the memory of Lena Carter's kidnapping video searing his mind. Judge Harlan Boone's syndicate had crushed their hacker collective, framed his mother, Aisha, for medical fraud, and left their safe house in ashes. Could a 16-year-old endure another blow? Chief Justice Elias Turner, huddled in a bay warehouse with Aisha and Maya, clutched Lena's ledger, its bribe records useless without her testimony. Sheriff Lyle Grayson's taunts echoed, a promise of more pain. Caleb's viral speech had sparked protests, but the syndicate's grip tightened, their racist wrath unrelenting. Was this the price of defying a corrupt gavel? Elias knew they couldn't hide forever. He slipped into Grayson's precinct at dawn, disguised in a janitor's uniform, the warehouse's damp air still clinging to his skin. The precinct, a fortress of concrete and arrogance, buzzed with deputies loyal to the syndicate. Elias navigated its halls, his heart pounding, and reached Grayson's office, its door ajar. Files littered the desk, ledgers matching Lena's, detailing trial rigging payments to Boone and beyond. Elias stuffed them into a duffel, his hand steady despite the risk. He found a USB with emails confirming the syndicate's network, a goldmine to expose their crimes. Could these files free Lena and clear Caleb? He slipped out, the precinct's fluorescent lights flickering like a warning. Elias rendezvoused with Nia Brooks, the private investigator, in a flooded alley, the Mississippi's hum masking their words. "We've got enough to bury Grayson," Nia said, her eyes scanning for shadows. They planned to free Lena, using the files to pressure a syndicate insider. Elias tracked her to a safe house in Algiers, a rotting mansion guarded by Grayson's men. At midnight, he crept through its overgrown yard, Nia disabling alarms with a handheld jammer. Lena, bound in a basement, gasped as Elias cut her ropes, her face bruised but defiant. "They'll kill us all," she whispered, but Elias's calm nod steadied her. They escaped as dawn broke, the mansion's silence a fragile victory. Was Lena's freedom the turning point they needed? Caleb, nursing his wounds in the warehouse, felt a spark of hope when Elias returned with Lena. The files, the rescue, they were a lifeline. But Boone's syndicate struck back with venom. Grayson, enraged by Lena's escape, leaked a fabricated story to local news, claiming Caleb had assaulted a teacher at school. The lie painted him as a violent predator, twisting his honor student record into a rap sheet. By noon, X buzzed with "Yeah, Caleb the Predator," racist trolls flooding posts with slurs. "Lock the thug up." Caleb's school turned against him, classmates shunning Jamal for defending him, their lockers tagged with hate. Aisha, her nursing license still suspended, read the posts, her chest tightening. How could a boy's truth be so easily erased? Syndicate's next blow was barbaric. A vigilante mob incited by Grayson's deputies spreading the assault lie targeted Aisha's clinic, a community health center in the lower 9th Ward. At dusk, they stormed the building, their shouts laced with racial venom. "Turner's spawn brings trouble," they screamed, smashing windows and overturning beds. Patients, some elderly, fled in panic, one collapsing from a heart scare. Aisha, volunteering despite her firing, tried to shield a child, glass shards, cutting her hands. The mob's torches lit the night, flames licking the clinic's walls, the air thick with smoke and hate. Elias, alerted by a frantic call, raced to the scene, pulling Aisha to safety as sirens wailed. Why did their fight cost innocent lives? Caleb, in the warehouse, hacked Boone's email from a burner laptop, his leg throbbing, but his fingers relentless. He found a thread detailing the syndicate's plan to frame Aisha and kidnap Lena, proof of Boone's orchestration. He leaked it to X, the email going viral alongside "Young Justice for Caleb." Protests swelled, thousands chanting outside the courthouse. Caleb's heart raced. The leak was a dagger to Boone's lies. He sent the email to Elias, who filed it with the U.S. attorney, hoping to reopen Caleb's case. The clinic's ashes, Aisha's bloodied hands, they fueled Caleb's defiance. Could a boy's hack shift the tide? Grayson's retaliation was a masterstroke of terror. His men planted a bomb in Elias's car, parked outside the warehouse. Its timer set for dawn. Elias, leaving to meet the attorney, spotted the device's red glow under the chassis. His military training kicked in, hands steady as he pried open the hood, sweat beading in the humid air. He disarmed it with seconds to spare, the click of the diffused timer louder than his heartbeat. The bomb was Climax 1. A syndicate death. Trap? Aisha, watching from the warehouse, clutched Maya, her breath hitching. How close had they come to losing everything? The syndicate's final strike landed at midnight. Grayson's deputies raided the Turners' new safe house, a dilapidated shotgun house in Bywater. They smashed through the door, rifles raised, as Elias shoved Caleb and Maya behind a couch. Bullets tore through plaster, a sniper's shot grazing. Caleb's shoulder, blood soaking his shirt. The raid was Climax 2, a brutal assault to end their fight. Nia, firing back with a borrowed pistol, held the deputies at bay, giving the family time to flee through a back alley. Caleb's vision blurred, pain searing, but he ran, the email leak his only weapon. Elias led them to a church, its steeple, a shadow against the moon. Reverend Clara Jones sheltered them, her congregation forming a human chain outside. The clinic's ruins, the bomb, the sniper, they were Boone's desperate gambit to silence a family. Caleb, bandaged by Clara, felt the weight of his wounds, his mother's pain, Lena's fear. Yet the protests, sparked by his leak, roared louder, a city rising against racism. Elias, clutching the syndicate files, saw Grayson's raid as a sign of fear. The syndicate was cracking, their strikes wilder, their lies thinner. Aisha, her hands scarred, held Caleb, her eyes fierce. They'd lost so much, but their defiance was a flame no bullet could douse. Comment number 1 if you believe Caleb's courage can topple this racist syndicate. Then hit like and subscribe to Stand with the Turners. Can Elias wield the syndicate's own secrets to save his family, or will Grayson's next attack burn their hope to ashes? The New Orleans morning shimmered with oppressive heat, the church's steeple casting a frail shadow over Caleb Turner's bandaged shoulder, the sniper's graze a fresh scar of Judge Harlan Boone's wrath. His leg, still tender from the bayou ambush, ached as he huddled with his family, sheltered by Reverend Clara Jones's congregation. Chief Justice Elias Turner clutched stolen syndicate files, their trial-rigging evidence a flickering hope after the clinic's ashes and Aisha's bloodied hands. Sheriff Lyle Grayson's bomb, disarmed by seconds, haunted Elias's dreams. Could a family survive such relentless racist hate? Caleb's leaked email exposing Boone's plans had sparked protests, but the safe house raid proved the syndicate's reach. Aisha, her nursing license stolen, held Maya, their eyes fierce despite the scars. The Turners were battered, but their fire burned on. Caleb's hack had lit a fuse, and Elias fanned the flames. He met Nia Brooks, the private investigator, in a jazz club's back room, its saxophone wails masking their words. Nia's contacts at a national outlet, the Crescent Herald, were hungry for a scoop. Elias handed over Boone's emails, the syndicate's ledgers, and Lena Carter's affidavit, each page a nail in Boone's coffin. "This'll shake the nation," Nia said, her scar glinting in the dim light. Caleb, patched up but limping, joined them, his burner laptop streaming protest footage. They leaked the files to the Herald, the story dropping at dawn. Headlines screamed, "Judge's Syndicate Frames Black Teen," with Boone's bribes laid bare. X erupted, millions sharing the expose. A Justice for Caleb trending globally. Protests swelled, thousands marching through the French Quarter, their chants a thunder against Boone's lies. Elias felt a rush of triumph. The media storm a sword to slay the syndicate. The Crescent Herald's editor, a grizzled veteran named Rosa Quinn, met Elias at a riverside diner, her notepad brimming with questions. "This is bigger than New Orleans," she said, promising front-page coverage and a federal probe. The governor, cornered by public outcry, vowed to investigate Boone's court, his press conference live-streamed to millions. Caleb watched on Nia's phone, his heart soaring. The protests, the headlines, they were proof his hack had pierced the syndicate's armor. Aisha, reading the article, dared to hope, her scarred hands trembling. Maya, sketching protest signs, grinned. "We're winning, right?" Elias nodded, the governor's words a lifeline. Was this the moment Boone's gavel cracked? But Boone's syndicate thrived on deception. In his chambers, his jowls quivering with rage, Boone huddled with Grayson, their plan a venomous counterstrike. They framed Elias for embezzling court funds, forging bank records showing millions siphoned to offshore accounts. The records, planted by a syndicate hacker, hit the Herald's desk as an anonymous tip. By noon, a new headline screamed, "Chief Justice embezzles millions," with Elias's photo splashed across X. The deepfake from the jail protest, already wounding his credibility, now seemed prophetic. Trolls swarmed, spewing racist bile. Crooked black judge like father like son. Caleb's allies, even Reverend Clara, hesitated, fearing association. Clara's congregation split, some whispering, "Maybe Elias is dirty." Elias's colleagues at the state bar distanced themselves, his seat under scrutiny. Aisha's eyes burned with tears, her family's honor shredded again. How could truth crumble so fast? Caleb's heart sank, the media storm turning against them. The protests wavered, some marchers peeling away, confused by the embezzlement lie. He limped to the church's attic, his laptop glowing, desperate to counter the frame-up. But Grayson's next blow was kinetic. His deputies, cloaked in dusk, chased Caleb through the French Quarter's narrow alleys, their sirens a banshee wail. Caleb's legs screamed with pain, but he darted through crowds, beads from a Mardi Gras float scattering underfoot. Deputies cornered him in a courtyard, their batons raised, one snarling, "You're done, thug." Caleb ducked a swing, slipping through a gate as tourists gawked, live streams capturing the chase. The pursuit was Climax 1, a public hunt to crush his defiance. He reached the church, gasping, Clara's chain of congregants shielding him. But the chase had branded him a fugitive, his face plastered on news as a dangerous suspect. Elias, at the diner, saw the chase on TV, his fists clenching. The embezzlement lie had isolated them, and now Caleb was prey. He rallied the remaining protesters, their signs sagging under the humid weight. At noon, a rally outside the courthouse drew thousands, their chants weaker but defiant. Reverend Clara spoke, her voice cracking, "Caleb's no thug." But Grayson's deputies struck again, lobbing tear gas into the crowd, canisters hissing. Like snakes, protesters choked, live streams showing chaos, the gas's sting blamed on Caleb's violence. News anchors fed syndicate lies reported, "Turner's rally turns riot." The rally was Climax 2, a syndicate sabotage to bury their cause. Aisha, shielding Maya in the crowd, coughed through the haze, her hope fading. Why did their fight ignite such chaos? Boone's final gambit was digital annihilation. His syndicate hacked the Herald servers, erasing the exposé and replacing it with a retraction. Evidence unverified. Turner story false. The hack, executed by a syndicate, Coda spread to X, where bots amplified the retraction, drowning Gasiuncha's justice for Caleb in noise. The governor, sensing the shift, backtracked, calling the probe premature. Protests fizzled, marchers disillusioned by the retraction's weight. Caleb, in the church attic, watched the posts, his laptop's glow dimming. The exposé, his hack, the protests all undone by a lie. Elias's embezzlement charge gained traction, the state bar scheduling a hearing to strip his title. Nia, scavenging data from a backup drive, cursed the hack's precision. How had the syndicate turned their triumph to ash? Grayson's coup de grace was a label of terror. He declared Caleb a terrorist, citing the riot and hacking as threats to public safety. The designation hit news, his face on every screen, a bounty posted for his capture. Neighbors, once allies, turned wary, some eyeing the reward. Clara's congregation, stretched thin, struggled to shield him. Caleb's shoulder bled through its bandage, the sniper's graze a reminder of their reach. He felt the terrorist label like a brand, Boone's racist caricature complete. Aisha, her hands scarred from the clinic, held him, her voice fierce. "You're my son, not their monster." Elias, facing the bar's scrutiny, saw the protests die. The media storm now a noose. The syndicate's lies had painted them as enemies of the state. Caleb, slumped in the attic, replayed the chase, the gas, the hack. His wounds, his family's pain, they were Boone's trophies, each strike crueler than the last. Yet the faint echo of protests, Clara's voice, kept him fighting. He wasn't a terrorist, he was a spark in a city ready to burn. Elias, in the church's nave, clutched the syndicate files, their edges worn but their truth intact. The media storm had betrayed them, but New Orleans' heart still beat for Caleb. Grayson's terror label was a desperate ploy, a sign the syndicate feared their defiance. The Turners, scarred but unbroken, braced for the next blow, their fight a flame no lie could extinguish. Thou shall, how could bites vanish like smoke? Elias, in the cabin, slammed his fist against the wall, the virus a syndicate strike to blind justice. Boone, in his chambers, chuckled, his jowls quivering, the hack his first counterattack. The syndicate's next blow was fire. Grayson's men firebombed Aisha's clinic again, targeting its rebuilt wing in the lower 9th Ward. At dusk, flames roared, racial slurs scrawled in red paint across the charred walls. Turner trash. The blaze was Climax 1, a racist assault, to break Aisha's spirit. Patients fled, their screams piercing the humid air, one elderly man collapsing from smoke inhalation. Aisha, volunteering to rebuild, pulled him to safety, her scarred hands bleeding anew. News crews swarmed, framing the fire as community backlash against the Turners. Ex-posts twisted the truth, trolls spewing, "Caleb's family burns." Everything. Aisha's eyes burned with tears, her clinic a symbol of hope, now ashes. Why did their fight ignite such hate? Caleb, desperate to fight back, slipped into the church's basement, his laptop humming. He tracked a syndicate enforcer, a burly ex-cop named Vince Malone, who'd bragged online about rigging trials. Caleb hacked Malone's phone, recording a call where he admitted Boone's orders to frame Caleb. The confession was gold, a dagger to the syndicate's heart. Caleb met Malone in a deserted warehouse, his leg limping but his voice steady, demanding more proof. Malone, sweating, spilled details of Boone's bribes, unaware of Caleb's hidden recorder. Caleb's heart soared, the recording a chance to save the trial. Was this the evidence to bury Boone? But Grayson's syndicate was steps ahead. Hours later, Malone was found dead in his car, a bullet through his skull, staged as a suicide. The police, syndicate puppets, pinned the murder on Caleb, claiming he'd silenced a witness. The accusation hit news. Caleb's face branded a killer alongside terrorist. The confession tape, uploaded to X, was flagged as fake. By syndicate bots, its views throttled. The murder was Climax 2, a brutal strike to crush Caleb's gambit. Elias at the church saw the headlines, his roar shaking the pews. How could a boy's truth be twisted into murder? Aisha, reading the posts, clutched Maya, her hope fraying. The trial, set for hours away, was now a trap. Grayson's final blow was social crucifixion. He placed a bounty on Caleb's head, $10,000 for his capture, dead or alive. Posters plastered New Orleans, Caleb's school photo under wanted terrorist. Neighbors, once allies, turned hunter, some eyeing the cash, their eyes cold. Clara's congregation, stretched thin, struggled to shield him, their chain breaking, under threats. Caleb, in the attic, felt the bounty like a noose, his wounds throbbing. Why did his fight turn friends to foes? He hid his laptop, its confession tape his last weapon, but the world saw him as Boone's monster. Elias, undeterred, spoke at a community center, its walls lined with protest signs. "My son is no killer," he thundered, his voice live-streamed to thousands. The crowd roared, "Man, justice for Caleb," trending anew. But Boone's syndicate sabotaged the event, cutting the power, plunging the center into darkness. Thugs, hired by Grayson trashed the stage, their boots smashing microphones as Elias shielded Clara. The sabotage was a final taunt, a warning that no platform was safe. Elias's speech, cut short, still sparked protests, but the trial loomed, evidenceless and tainted. Aisha, bandaging Caleb's shoulder, saw his fire dim, her own scars a mirror of his pain. Was their defiance enough? Caleb, slumped in the attic, replayed Malone's murder, the bounty, the fire. His wounds, Aisha's losses, they were Boone's racist trophies, each strike crueler than the last. Yet the protests, Elias's voice, kept him fighting. He wasn't a murderer, he was a sun, a spark. Elias, in the center's ruins, clutched. The few files Nia salvaged, their truth battered but alive. The syndicate's bounty was desperate, a sign they feared Caleb's tape. The Turners, bleeding but unbowed, braced for the trial, their fight a beacon in New Orleans' dark. Comment number 1. If you stand against this racist bounty on Caleb's life, then hit like and subscribe to fuel his truth. Can Caleb's confession tape pierce the syndicate's lies, or will Boone's courtroom trap bury the Turners for good? The New Orleans night pulsed with the weight of betrayal, its humid air clinging to Caleb Turner's scarred shoulder, the sniper's graze a burning reminder of Judge Harlan Boone's syndicate. Huddled in Reverend Clara Jones's church, Caleb's leg throbbed from the Bayou ambush, his heart heavier with the bounty on his head. Chief Justice Elias Turner gripped salvaged syndicate files, their truth buried by a hacked media storm and a federal court's erased evidence. Aisha, her hands scarred from the firebombed clinic, held Maya, their eyes defiant despite Sheriff Lyle Grayson's terrorist label, branding Caleb a murderer. The murder of Vince Malone, pinned on Caleb, and the fire's racist slurs were Boone's cruel strokes. Could a boy hunted by his own city fight on? Caleb's defiance was a spark in the dark. He slipped into the church's basement, his burner laptop casting a faint glow. The confession tape, Malone's voice admitting Boone's frame-up, was throttled online, but Caleb knew the courthouse servers held original logs, proving his innocence. At midnight, he crept through the city's shadows, dodging bounty hunters, their eyes glinting with greed. The Orleans Parish Courthouse loomed, its marble facade a fortress of lies. Caleb, using skills from Coding Club, bypassed a side door's lock, its click echoing in the silent halls. The records room, a labyrinth of humming servers, was his target. His fingers danced across a keyboard, pulling logs that showed no hacking from his email. He copied them to a flash drive, his pulse racing. This was his lifeline, a chance to bury Boone's lies. He slipped out, the drive tucked in his sock, victory tingling in his veins. Caleb returned to the church, the flash drive a beacon of hope. He broadcast the logs live on X, streaming from a hidden router, his voice steady. These prove I'm no hacker, no murderer. Boone's syndicate framed me. The post exploded, millions sharing Garter's justice for Caleb, protests reigniting in the French Quarter's neon haze. Elias, watching the stream, felt pride swell, his son's courage a blade against the syndicate. Nia Brooks, guarding the church, nodded. Kid's a warrior. The broadcast swayed public trust, news outlets questioning Boone's trial. Aisha, her scars aching, dared to smile, Maya sketching new protest signs. Was Caleb's hack the key to justice? But Boone's syndicate was a venomous hydra. His clerk, a wiry man with cold eyes, betrayed Caleb's move, planting evidence in the courthouse. Charred debris from the clinic, labeled as Caleb's arson. The clerk tipped Grayson, and by dawn news screamed, Turner Teen Burns Clinic, with photos of the debris tied to Caleb's terrorist label. The accusation landed like a guillotine, the broadcast's triumph tainted. Elias at the church cursed the clerk's betrayal, the arson charge a racist lie to bury Caleb's logs. Aisha's eyes burned, her clinic's ashes weaponized against her son. How could a boy's truth be twisted into fire? The clerk's plant was a syndicate strike, turning Caleb's victory to ash. Grayson's next blow was relentless. His deputies raided Caleb's hideout, a cramped attic above the church at dusk. Sirens wailed as they smashed through the door, rifles gleaming under moonlight. Caleb, alerted by Clara's shout, scrambled to the roof, his legs screaming with pain. The deputies pursued, their boots clanging on the fire escape, one snarling, "Terrorists mine!" Caleb leaped to a neighboring roof, tiles cracking underfoot, his shoulder's wound reopening, blood soaking his shirt. The raid was Climax 1, a syndicate hunt to crush his defiance. He slid down a drainpipe, landing in an alley, protesters shielding him as deputies fired warning shots. The chase branded him a fugitive, his face on every screen. Aisha's pain deepened. Grayson's men arrested her at the church, charging her with aiding a fugitive based on forged texts claiming she'd hidden Caleb. The arrest, broadcast. Liv showed Aisha handcuffed, her scarred hands trembling, Maya screaming, "Mum!" Elias at a safe house saw the footage, his roar shaking the walls. He raced to the precinct, demanding her release, but Grayson's deputies smirked. She's with her terrorist kid now. Aisha's arrest was a racist dagger, punishing her for Caleb's fight. Elias's rescue attempt was thwarted when Grayson incited a riot outside the precinct, his men posing as protesters, lobbing bottles to spark chaos. The riot was Climax 2, a syndicate trap to block Elias. Protesters scattered, news blaming Turner's violence, Aisha still in cuffs. Grayson's syndicate escalated the hunt. The governor, swayed by syndicate donors, declared Caleb a public enemy, authorizing lethal force. News flashed his photo, armed and dangerous. The bounty doubled to $20,000. Neighbors, once allies, turned hunters, there, doors locked, eyes cold. Clara's congregation, battered by threats, struggled to shield the family, their chain fraying. Caleb, hiding in a bayou shack with Nia, felt the public enemy label like a brand, Boone's racist caricature complete. His wounds throbbed, the flash drive his only weapon, but the world saw him as a monster. How could a city turn on its own son? Elias, in the safe house, fought to counter the lies. He smuggled the logs to a local reporter, Rosa Quinn, who'd broken the syndicate story before its hack. Rosa promised to verify the data, but Grayson's men tailed her, slashing her tires to delay the story. Caleb's broadcast kept protests alive, thousands marching despite the riot's chaos. He streamed again, his voice raw, "I'm no arsonist. Boone's burning my family." The video went viral, your Caleb innocent trending, but Grayson's final strike was digital. He dropped a deepfake showing Caleb threatening to bomb the courthouse, crafted with chilling precision. The deepfake hit X, bots amplifying it, drowning Caleb's truth. News anchors, fed syndicate lies, called him a clear threat, the governor vowing to end this crisis. Aisha, in her cell, saw the deepfake, her heart breaking. Why did lies outrun truth? Caleb, in the shack, replayed the raid, Aisha's arrest, the deepfake. His wounds, his mother's chains, they were Boone's racist trophies, each strike crueler than the last. Yet the protests, Rosa's promise, kept him fighting. He wasn't a public enemy. He was a son, a spark. Elias, clutching the logs, saw the deepfake's lies, but New Orleans' chants were his shield. The syndicate's desperation, their wild strikes showed fear of Caleb's truth. The Turners, bleeding but unbowed, braced for the trial's next blow, their defiance aflame. No deepfake could snuff. The New Orleans dawn broke with a sullen heat, its weight pressing against Caleb Turner's scarred shoulder. The sniper's graze now a dull ache beneath fresh bandages. Hidden in a bayou shack, his legs still stiff from the mercenary ambush, Caleb felt the sting of Sheriff Lyle Grayson's deepfake, branding him a courthouse bomber. The governor's public enemy decree, a $20,000 bounty, turned neighbors into hunters. Chief Justice Elias Turner, clutching salvaged server logs, stood with Aisha, her wrists raw from jail cuffs, and Maya, their eyes fierce despite the syndicate's lies. Judge Harlan Boone's arson frame-up, Aisha's arrest. They were racist. Daggers to crush a black family's truth. Could a boy hunted like prey turn the tide? Elias saw the federal trial as their last stand. He stormed Judge Amara Wells's courtroom, the Orleans Parish Courthouse's marble halls echoing with his footsteps. The gallery, packed with reporters and protesters, buzzed as Elias presented the server logs, their timestamps proving Caleb's innocence in the hacking charge. "My son is no terrorist," he declared, his voice a thunderclap detailing Boone's syndicate bribes and Malone's murdered confession. Caleb, smuggled in by Nia Brooks, stood in the back, his heart pounding. The jury leaned forward, their eyes softening, swayed by Elias's evidence. Reverend Clara Jones in the front row nodded, her congregation's chants outside shaking the windows. The logs were a lifeline, peeling back Boone's lies. Was this the moment justice prevailed? The jury's murmurs grew, some nodding, others scribbling notes. Amara's gavel fell, her voice steady. "The evidence is compelling." Elias felt a surge of hope, the trial tilting toward Caleb. Protesters outside roared, "Us justice for Caleb," trending anew on X, millions sharing the logs. Aisha, released on bail, Elias secured, gripped Maya's hand, her scarred fingers trembling with cautious joy. Caleb's broadcast had reignited the city, his truth piercing the syndicate's deepfake. For a fleeting moment, the Turners stood tall, their defiance a beacon in the courtroom's fluorescent glow. But Boone's syndicate was a serpent, its fangs poised to strike. Boone, in his chambers, his jowls quivering with rage, unleashed a staged catastrophe. He'd bribed a court security guard, a syndicate lackey, to smuggle a gun into the gallery. As Elias concluded, the guard fired a shot into the ceiling, screaming, "Turner's kid sent me." Plaster rained, the gallery panicked, reporters diving under benches. The guard fled, dropping the gun, staged to look like Caleb's doing. Amara slammed her gavel, ordering lockdown, but the damage was done. News crews, fed syndicate lies, flashed, Caleb's terror plot foiled. The shooting was Climax 1, a racist frame-up to shatter the jury's trust. Caleb in the back froze, his eyes wide, the logs now tainted by chaos. "How could a single bullet undo their fight?" Elias roared. "This is Boone's lie." But deputies swarmed, ushering the jury out. Caleb slipped through a side door, Nia guiding him to the courthouse basement, its damp tunnels reeking of mildew. Deputies pursued, their flashlights slicing the dark, one snarling, "Terrorists ours!" Caleb's legs screamed, but he navigated the maze, emerging in an alley as sirens wailed. Protesters shielded him, their chain fraying under police batons. The escape was frantic, his wounds reopening, blood seeping through bandages. Elias, trapped in the courtroom, cursed the staged shot, its echo a syndicate trap to bury his son. Taisha's heart sank, her bail a hollow victory against Boone's gambit. Grayson's next strike was personal. His men kidnapped Aisha from the church, where she'd gone to rally Clara's congregation. They ambushed her in the nave, zip-tying, her wrists one deputy hissing, "Your kid's done, nurse." A taunting note left for Elias demanded his surrender. "Give up or she's gone." The kidnapping was Climax 2, a racist assault to break the Turners' spirit. Elias at a safe house got the note, his hands shaking with fury. He tracked Aisha to a syndicate warehouse in Algiers, its rusted gates guarded by Grayson's thugs. Caleb, hiding with Nia, hacked security cameras, spotting Aisha bound inside. His fingers flew, disabling alarms, his wounds throbbing but his resolve iron. He slipped into the warehouse, dodging patrols, and cut Aisha's bonds, her eyes wide with relief. They fled as guards fired, bullets ricocheting off steel. Aisha's rescue was a desperate triumph, but the syndicate's claws were deep. Boone's retaliation deepened the wound. He bribed the federal prosecutor, a syndicate ally named Paul Vance, to drop Caleb's case, citing tainted evidence from the shooting. Vance, in a press conference, declared, "The logs are compromised, the trial unsustainable." Amara, furious, fought the dismissal, but Vance's influence held. The trial collapsed, the jury discharged, Boone's smirk flashing on news. Elias's evidence, the logs, Aisha's rescue, all for nothing. Protesters wavered, ex-posts questioning Caleb's innocence, the deepfake's lies lingering. How could a prosecutor betray justice so blatantly? Aisha, safe but shaken, clung to Maya, her jail scars a mirror of their pain. Caleb's rescue had saved her, but the trial's end was a guillotine. Elias refused to break. He streamed a closing argument from a hidden router, his voice raw. "Boone's syndicate rigged this trial, but we'll fight on." The video went viral, millions sharing Caleb innocent, protests surging despite the dismissal. News outlets, spurred by Rosa Quinn's verified logs, questioned Vance's motives. Should crooked prosecutor trending? But Boone's final blow was cataclysmic. He declared a mistrial citing public safety after the shooting, and Grayson's men ambushed the Turners' convoy as they left the safe house. Deputies cloaked in dusk rammed their van, a car bomb exploding feet away, its blast throwing Caleb to the ground, his ears ringing. Shrapnel grazed his arm, blood mixing with dirt, the ambush a syndicate death trap. Elias pulled him to safety, protesters forming a shield as sirens screamed. The bomb's roar echoed, Boone's desperate bid to end their fight. Caleb, gasping in the wreckage, felt the mistrial's weight, Aisha's kidnapping, the bomb's heat. His wounds, his family's scars, they were Boone's racist trophies, each strike crueler than the last. Yet the protests, Elias's stream, kept him alive. He wasn't a terrorist. He was a sun, a flame. Elias, shielding Aisha and Maya, saw the convoy's flames, but New Orleans's chants were his armor. The syndicate's bomb was a sign of fear, their lies fraying. The Turners, bleeding but unyielding, braced for the final trial, their defiance a spark no explosion could snuff. The New Orleans dusk burned with a crimson haze, its heat pressing against Caleb Turner's bloodied arm, shrapnel from Sheriff Lyle Grayson's car bomb stinging beneath crude bandages. Huddled in a safe house, a crumbling Creole cottage, Caleb's shoulder and leg throbbed, scars of a racist syndicate's wrath. Chief Justice Elias Turner clutched server logs, their truth battered by Judge Harlan Boone's mistrial and Aisha's kidnapping. Aisha, her wrists raw from syndicate cuffs, held. Maya, their eyes fierce despite the governor's public enemy decree. The staged courthouse shooting, the deepfake bombing threat. They were Boone's desperate lies to crush a black family's fight. Could a boy branded a terrorist spark justice? Elias saw a final chance in federal court. He smuggled the logs to Judge Rosa Delgado, a U.S. district judge untainted by Boone's syndicate, meeting her in a bayou diner, its jukebox humming blues. "These prove Caleb's innocence," Elias said, handing over the flash drive, Lena Carter's affidavit and stolen ledgers. Rosa's eyes gleamed. "I'll force a new trial." The hearing was set, a federal courtroom beyond Boone's reach. Elias's heart pounded, the logs a sword to slay the syndicate. Nia Brooks, the private investigator, guarded the diner's lot, her pistol steady. Protests surged on X, justice for Caleb trending as thousands marched, their chants shaking the French Quarter's cobblestones. Was this the trial to end Boone's reign? At dawn, Caleb testified in Rosa's court, his voice raw but unbroken. "I'm no thief, no murderer. Boone framed me to silence my dad." He detailed the robbery lie, the hacking charge, Malone's confession, his wounds a testament to syndicate cruelty. Elias presented the logs, their timestamps clearing Caleb's, email and Lena's affidavit exposing Boone's bribes. The jury, diverse and untainted, leaned forward, their eyes locked on Caleb. Rosa's gavel fell, her voice firm. "The evidence is admissible." The gallery erupted, reporters live-streaming, Maestian Caleb innocent soaring. Aisha gripped Maya's hand, her scarred fingers trembling with hope. Elias's closing argument, a searing indictment of systemic racism, swayed the jury. They deliberated, returning with a verdict. Boone guilty of judicial misconduct, Caleb exonerated. The courtroom roared, protesters outside chanting, their signs glowing under streetlights. Was this justice at last? But Boone's syndicate was a dying beast, its claws sharp. Grayson, in a precinct bunker, his cigar smoldering, planted a bomb in the courthouse hidden in a ventilation shaft, its timer set for the verdict's reading. The device, wired with military precision, was meant to kill Elias, Caleb, and Rosa, a final syndicate strike. Caleb, leaving the courtroom, spotted a faint red glow in a grate, his coding instinct screaming danger. He dove into the shaft, his wounds screaming, and found the bomb, its timer at 90 seconds. Using a pocket knife and skills from Tech Club, he pried open its casing, sweat beading in the humid air. Wires tangled red and blue, but Caleb's hands were steady, snipping the right one with 3 seconds left. The bomb was Climax 1, a racist death trap disarmed by a boy's courage. Elias, alerted, pulled Caleb out, his roar shaking the halls. "My son's a hero." The verdict stood, Boone's conviction sealed, his allies turning on him. Federal marshals arrested him, his jowls sagging as cuffs snapped on. Grayson's syndicate crumbled, ledgers exposing dozens of corrupt judges and sheriffs. Protesters cheered, X ablaze with Mun Boone Falls, millions sharing Caleb's testimony. Aisha, her scars a badge of survival, hugged Caleb, Maya's laughter a rare light. Elias felt triumph, the logs, Lena's truth, Caleb's defiance, they'd shattered Boone's gavel. But Grayson wasn't done. His men, loyal to the syndicate's core, ambushed the Turners' safe house at midnight, a dilapidated cottage in the 9th Ward. Deputies stormed through, rifles blazing, their shouts laced. With racial venom, terrorists done. Caleb dove behind a couch, his arm bleeding anew, as Elias fired a borrowed pistol. The attack was Climax 2, a syndicate assault to erase their victory. Protesters, alerted by Nia's texts, formed a human chain, shielding the family as bullets tore through plaster. Clara Jones's congregation joined, their chants drowning the gunfire, a city rising to protect its own. Elias pulled Aisha and Maya to safety, Caleb limping behind, his wounds slowing him. Grayson, leading the assault, escaped into the night, his radio crackling. "This ain't over, Turners." His vow was a chilling promise, the syndicate's embers still glowing. A sniper, perched on a nearby roof, fired a final shot, the bullet grazing Elias's temple, blood trickling down his cheek. Nia tackled Caleb to the ground, the sniper vanishing as police swarmed, drawn by the protests. The graze was a warning. Grayson's last taunt, his escape a shadow over the verdict's fire. How could a convicted judge's ally slip free? Caleb, gasping in the safe house's wreckage, felt the bomb's weight, the ambush's chaos. His wounds, Aisha's scars, Elias's. Blood, they were Boone's racist legacy, each strike a testament to their survival. Yet the protests, the verdict, they were his triumph. A boy's truth toppling a syndicate's throne. Elias, bandaging his temple, saw Grayson's escape as a desperate flight, the syndicate's core exposed. Aisha, holding Maya, her eyes fierce, knew their fight had sparked a city's heart. Nia, salvaging the flash drive, grinned. "Kid, you broke their machine." The Turners' safe house, battered but standing, was a fortress of defiance, their victory aflame in New Orleans' dark. The verdict's fire spread, federal probes launching into Boone's allies, news outlets hailing Caleb as a hero. Protesters marched, their signs now reading "Caleb freed," the French Quarter alive with hope. But Grayson's vow, the sniper's graze, lingered like smoke. Elias clutched the logs, their truth a shield, but the syndicate's shadow loomed. Caleb, his arm slung, replayed the bomb's wires, the ambush's bullets. He wasn't Boone's delinquent, he was a son, a spark that ignited a city. Aisha's scars, Maya's courage, they were proof of a family unbroken. The Turners, bleeding, but unbowed, faced the dawn, their fight a beacon no sniper could dim. The New Orleans sunrise cast a golden veil over the battered safe house, its splintered walls a testament to Sheriff Lyle Grayson's ambush. Caleb Turner, his arm and leg scarred from shrapnel and sniper fire, stood with his family, their breath heavy in the humid air. Chief Justice Elias Turner, blood crusted on his temple from the sniper's graze, held Aisha and Maya, their eyes fierce despite Judge Harlan Boone's conviction. The federal verdict had freed Caleb, toppled Boone and sparked reforms, but Grayson's escape and vow of revenge loomed like a storm cloud. The courthouse bomb, disarmed by Caleb's steady hands, and the syndicate's racist lies, from deep fakes to bounties, were fresh wounds. Could a family's triumph outshine a syndicate's shadow? Boone's fall was seismic. Federal marshals dragged him from his chambers, his jowls sagging, cuffs glinting under news cameras. The Crescent Herald ran front-page exposés detailing his bribes, trial rigging, and Malone's murder, all tied to a sprawling syndicate. X buzzed with no twine Boone Falls, millions sharing Caleb's testimony, his voice a clarion against systemic racism. Protests morphed into celebrations, the French Quarter alive with jazz and signs reading "Caleb freed." Elias's verdict, condemning Boone's corruption, spurred statewide probes, dozens of judges and sheriffs indicted. Aisha, her scarred hands clasped, dared to dream of rebuilding her clinic, its ashes a symbol of survival. Maya, sketching victory posters, grinned, her laughter a rare light. Caleb, his wounds bandaged, felt the city's pulse, his exoneration a spark that lit New Orleans. Was this justice's dawn? But Grayson's shadow darkened the horizon. A manifesto, leaked to X from an encrypted server, surfaced days after Boone's arrest. Grayson's voice, cold and venomous, claimed he and Boone were pawns of a secret judicial cabal led by Supreme Court Justice Victor Hargrove. The manifesto detailed a network rigging trials nationwide, framing black defendants to protect elite interests. The Turners were a test, Grayson hissed, and Elias was the target. The post went viral, FARC cabal exposed trending, millions reeling at the revelation. Elias, in the safe house, read the manifesto, his temples scar throbbing. Hargrove, a revered figure, had dined at Elias's table, their friendship a lie. How could a mentor betray justice so deeply? The manifesto's truth cut deeper. Aisha's trauma, her clinic's ruins, her jail scars, they weighed on her, nightmares of Grayson's cuffs waking her in sweat. She confided in Elias, her voice breaking, "We won, but I'm still afraid." Caleb, overhearing, felt guilt twist his gut, his fight costing his mother's peace. Maya, quieter since the ambush, clung to her sketches, her innocence frayed. The family's victory was tainted, their scars a reminder of a war not fully won. Protesters, emboldened by the manifesto, demanded Hargrove's resignation, but his silence was deafening, his power untouchable. Could a city's roar reach the Supreme Court? Caleb, restless, dug into the manifesto's metadata, his laptop humming in the safehouse's attic. He traced its upload to a syndicate server, uncovering files on the jewelry store robbery. The heist, a staged operation, was designed to test the syndicate's framing tactics, targeting Elias to discredit black judges. Caleb's arrest, Boone's, lies they were chess moves in Hargrove's game. Each strike a racist blade to maintain white power. The files named dozens of framed defendants, their lives crushed like Caleb's. His heart raced, the revelation a bomb bigger than the one. He'd disarmed. Was he just a pawn in a national conspiracy? He shared the files with Nia Brooks, who gasped, "This is bigger than Boone." Elias, clutching the files, met Judge Rosa Delgado, the federal judge who'd convicted Boone. In a Bayou diner, its neon flickering, he showed her the robbery's truth. Hargrove's cabal is untouchable, Rosa warned, but vowed to escalate. The files to the Justice Department. The meeting was a flicker of hope, but Grayson's final counterattack was chilling. A hidden camera, planted in Elias's chambers months ago, streamed live to X, exposing his every move. The feed, hacked by syndicate coders, revealed Elias's meetings with Rosa, Nia, and Clara, framing them as a conspiracy against Hargrove. The video was Climax 1, a racist trap to undermine the Turners' victory. X erupted. Turner conspiracy trending, trolls spewing, black judges rigged the system. Protesters wavered, some questioning Elias's motives, the manifesto's truth twisted by the feed. The camera's reveal flipped the narrative. Hargrove issued a statement, denying the cabal, claiming Elias's vendetta fabricated the manifesto. News anchors fed syndicate lies, called the Turners' fight a dangerous obsession, their victory now a trap to expose reformist judges. The Justice Department, pressured by Hargrove's allies, delayed the probe, citing conflicting evidence. Elias's colleagues at the state bar, once allies, shunned him, his seat teetering. Aisha's nightmares worsened, her clinics rebuilding stalled by donors spooked by the feed. Maya's sketches grew darker, her hope dimming. Caleb, in the attic, watched the feed, his wounds throbbing. How could their triumph be weaponized against them? Yet the Turners' fire burned. Caleb streamed a final video, his voice raw. "The robbery was staged, Boone was a pawn, and Hargrove's watching us. We're not done." The post went viral, millions sharing a chain exposed the cabal. Protests surging in Washington, D.C., Elias in the safe house drafted a public letter vowing to fight Hargrove's network, his temple's scar a badge of defiance. Nia, salvaging syndicate data, found names of other framed defendants, a list to free them. Clara's congregation marched, their chants a heartbeat for justice. Aisha, her hands scarred but steady, planned a new clinic, her spirit unbroken. The camera's feed meant to crush them had exposed the cabal's fear, their lies a desperate shield. The nation reeled, inspired by Caleb's courage, haunted by Hargrove's shadow. Protests spread, cities demanding reform, but the cabal's reach was vast, its agents silent in marble halls. Caleb, his laptop dim, replayed the robbery files, his wounds a map of their fight. He wasn't Boone's delinquent. He was a spark, igniting a movement. Elias, holding Aisha and Maya, saw the protests, their signs a sea of hope. The camera's truth was double-edged, a trap that revealed the enemy's face. The Turners, scarred, but unbowed, faced an uncertain dawn, their defiance a flame no cabal could douse. The saga of Caleb Turner unveils profound truths about resilience, systemic racism, and the fight for justice. First, courage can shatter oppressive systems. Caleb, a black teen framed as a delinquent by a racist judge, defied lies with hacks and testimony, toppling Judge Harlan Boone's syndicate. His bravery teaches us that youth can spark change against racist odds. Second, systemic racism is a relentless machine. Boone's bribes, Grayson's deepfakes, and the cabal's framing of black defendants reveal institutions built to crush minorities, demanding our vigilance. Third, family unity is a fortress. Elias, Aisha, and Maya endured firebombs, bounties, and betrayal. Their bond a shield against racist assaults. Fourth, truth is a double-edged sword. Caleb's exposés, from server logs to Malone's confession, swayed millions, but invited ruthless counterattacks, showing the cost of challenging power. Finally, victories are fragile. Boone's conviction and reforms were overshadowed by a Supreme Court cabal, urging us to question who truly rules. This story calls us to act against racist systems in our own communities, to amplify voices like Caleb's, and to fight for a justice that doesn't bend to wealth or prejudice. What racist barriers have you seen, and how will you confront them? Share your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and spread this story to ignite change. Thank you for joining the Turners' battle. May you carry their courage to challenge injustice wherever it hides.